Picture this. You're walking through a crowded place. You trip. Not a big trip, a small, stupid stumble. Nobody got hurt. It lasted maybe half a second. And immediately, your eyes scan the room. Who saw that? Did they see that? Oh no, they definitely saw that. Your face goes red. Your brain replays it. You spend the next 5 minutes certain that every single person in that space is thinking about what just happened to you. Here's the thing. They're not. They never were. What you just experienced is one of the most universal psychological phenomena on Earth. It's called the invisible audience. And once you understand it, you'll never feel quite as watched as you do right now. The term was coined in 1967 by a psychologist named David Elkind. He was studying teenagers, specifically why they are so painfully, excruciatingly self-conscious. Why does a teenager turn bright red when called on in class? Why do they refuse to leave the house if their hair looks slightly wrong? Elkind's answer: the teenage brain hasn't yet learned to separate its own self-focus from other people's focus. In other words, because the teenager is thinking intensely about themselves, they assume everyone else is too. They construct an imaginary audience, a group of people who are watching, judging, and remembering everything they do. The audience isn't real, but the feeling is completely, physically real. Now here's the part that should probably concern us all. This doesn't fully go away when you grow up. Most adults just carry a slightly quieter version of the invisible audience around with them every single day. At work, on public transport, in the gym, at the supermarket. Performing just a little for an audience that mostly isn't paying attention. So how does the invisible audience actually show up in real life? Let's start with the spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is the tendency to believe that a bright, invisible spotlight follows you everywhere, illuminating everything you do, say, wear, and feel, for everyone around you to see. You have a pimple. You are convinced every person you meet noticed immediately. You mispronounce a word in a meeting. You assume everyone is quietly judging your intelligence. You wear the wrong outfit to an event. You spend the entire night certain people are looking. The spotlight is always on, and you are always the person it's following. Except, it isn't, and it isn't. In 2000, psychologists Galovich, Medvec, and Savitsky ran a now famous experiment at Cornell University. They asked participants to wear an embarrassing t-shirt, a large photo of a famous person on the front, and then walk into a room full of other students. Afterwards, participants were asked to estimate what percentage of people in the room noticed your shirt. The answer they gave, about 50%. The actual number, 23%. Less than half of what they expected. The spotlight was less than half as bright as it felt. This is the spotlight effect in action, and it doesn't stop with embarrassment. The invisible audience also creates social comparison, constantly measuring yourself against what you think others are thinking about you. Am I doing as well as people expect? Do I look like I have it together? Does my life look successful from the outside? You're not measuring yourself against reality. You're measuring yourself against your own imaginary audience's imaginary standards. Then there's performance anxiety. The invisible audience loves this one. The moment you feel watched, even when nobody is watching, your brain shifts into performance mode. You become more self-conscious. You think about your hands too much. You forget how to walk normally. And that self-consciousness makes you perform slightly worse, which makes you feel more watched, which makes you more self-conscious. The invisible audience isn't just imaginary, it actively makes things harder. And then there's the mistake catastrophe. You make a small error. You say the wrong thing, you drop something, and for the rest of the day, maybe longer, you are convinced that the people who witnessed it are replaying it, retelling it, judging you for it. They're not. They've already forgotten. They moved on seconds after it happened. But you're still in the screening room, watching it on loop. Here's the thing about that t-shirt experiment. Why were only 23% of people paying attention? Because the other 77% were busy thinking about themselves, their own embarrassing moments, their own outfits, their own worries about what other people thought of them. Every single person in that room had their own invisible spotlight, pointed at themselves. This is the beautiful paradox at the heart of the invisible audience. Everyone feels watched. Nobody is watching. We are all invisible audiences to each other, simultaneously, all the time. 8 billion lead roles, 0 audience members. Think about what that means. The moment you stepped into a room worried about being judged, so did the other 11 people in that room. The person you thought was staring at you, they were worried you were staring at them. It's invisible audiences all the way down. Now, social media made this significantly worse. For the first time in human history, we have a platform where you can actually see how many people are watching. The likes, the views, the follower counts. The invisible audience became a visible number, and that number colonized our sense of self. We started performing for the feed before we'd done the thing, ordering food that photographs well, going to places because they look good from outside, living our lives slightly for the camera that may or may not be watching. The invisible audience graduated from a feeling to a metric. But here's the evolutionary part, because this didn't come from nowhere. In small tribal communities, social surveillance was survival. Being noticed by the group meant you mattered. Being excluded or judged meant danger, so your brain developed a system for tracking social standing, for monitoring how others saw you, for caring intensely about reputation. That system was genuinely useful for 200,000 years. It's now slightly overreacting to someone watching your Instagram story. So, knowing all this, what do you actually do when the audience shows up? 4 things. None of them are just stop caring what people think. Tool 1, the audience audit. When you feel the invisible spotlight, stop and look around. Literally look. Is anyone actually paying attention to you right now? Specifically you? Usually the answer is no, and that no is enough to quiet the audience, even slightly. Tool 2, the other spotlight reminder. Visualize every other person in the room with their own invisible spotlight pointed directly at themselves. The person you're sure is judging your outfit? Their spotlight is on their own shoes, their own hair, their own slightly awkward smile. Everyone is the center of their own story. That's not enough room left to also make you the center of theirs. Tool 3, the tomorrow test. Ask yourself, will I remember this specific moment of embarrassment tomorrow, next week, in a year? If the answer is no, and it almost always is, then the audience's attention span is even shorter than you feared. They've already moved on. You can too. Tool 4, show up anyway. The invisible audience is loudest when you're most uncertain, and it gets quieter every time you do the thing it told you not to. Speak anyway, show up anyway, wear the outfit anyway. Each time you do, the audience loses a little of its power because you proved it wrong, and your brain keeps that record. And the final mindset shift, the one that changes everything. You are not a supporting character in everyone else's film. You are the director of your own. Remember that person who tripped at the start? Let's go back. They trip. They scan the room. They're convinced everyone saw. But here's what's actually in the thought bubbles of the crowd around them. One person is mentally replaying an argument they had this morning. Another is wondering if they left the stove on. Someone is thinking about what to have for dinner. One person is trying to remember a song and can only get the first 4 notes. Another is composing a text in their head and getting the wording wrong. Nobody in that crowd has a single thought about the trip. Nobody. The invisible audience was never there. It was constructed entirely inside one person's head by one person's brain, performing for one person's fears. And here's the most liberating version of that fact. If nobody is watching, then you can stop performing. You can trip and keep walking. You can wear the outfit. You can say the wrong word and move on. You can be exactly as imperfect and messy and human as you actually are. Because the room you've been performing for, it was always empty.